drink for my troubles, another cold cigarette. I'm not the type, but I'll take a bet. That flame will keep burning on as I go chasing.
What do you want to talk about?
Good morning, everybody. It is Halsey Live. We have an old friend and a new guest on the show, Apex Imperialist. He could be found on Twitter at Apex Imperialist. Do you have a website or anything?
Not really.
Okay.
I started working on this Israel First Party thing, which is a website, but it's not really completed.
It's not live yet. Okay, well, we'll make sure when it
No,
is live, we'll
live.
attach it. We'll attach it to the information. But for now, we'll say
nice.
You can find him on Twitter at Apex Imperialist. And let's just get started. We're going to have a fun conversation today about Israeli politics and philosophy and a couple of the other things that make the show fun. And we'll just get right into it. I know you've been very critical of the Israeli political system. So what do you see as being the main problem? Because I know that Israel is more defined left and right than even America is left and right. Because left and right is like kind of a moving target. You know what I'm saying?
I would say less so, because
How come?
the Jewish Israel has about 100-something Jewish Knesset members. So the Israeli government, which is only Jews, it doesn't include Arabs, is
Right.
basically 60% of these 61+%. Sorry. Yeah, it's basically 60% of the Jewish population, almost. Because
Sure.
61 Knesset members is half of the Knesset, but if you get rid of the Arabs, that's more than that's basically 60% of the Jews.
So for
So
those
we have a
not
very
familiar,
center government.
for those not familiar, it's a parliamentary system. The Knesset is their parliament. And in order to form a functioning government, you have to control a majority of that parliament, which is 61 seats out of 120.
Right. So when you remove the Arabs, you really have a very centrist government. But that's not really the issue. The issue is our politicians promise us stuff and then they don't deliver, even when they can. So, for example, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir promised that they will support the Hilltop Youth. That's obviously not their only promise, but it was a major promise. And then what did they do? Smotrich is the Minister of Judea and Samaria on top of being the Minister of Finance. That makes him practically in every way Prime Minister of Judea and Samaria, because he controls a parallel civilian infrastructure in that area that is, for international law reasons, not a part of the Israeli civilian apparatus. As a result of that, he has to give his stamp of approval for anything that happens over there.
Right.
Yet, whenever they have to be, kicked out of their homes, the guy just stamps on it. And then you have Ben-Gvir, who has the same power alongside Israel Katz, because one controls the border police, or Magav, which is used for such activities, and one controls the army.
Okay.
So two of these people who basically promised to help a certain group threw them to the dogs. And then Ben-Gvir's other major promise to the public was that the police force will finally function.
Okay.
But if you look at recent articles, you see places like Beersheba have been completely neglected under this new government. You have Bedouins robbing stores in broad daylight. They're not getting arrested.
Running through the streets with axes. I mean, I just saw that the other day.
Right. They were basically deciding that the Israeli government is so weak, we can just do a pogrom against Jews. Who's going to stop us? And so with all of this high-tech addiction that Israel has, we spend all this money on high-tech and we forget the basics.
Right.
And then you have the opposite, which is Russia, where they don't really do high-tech, but they know how to do the basics really well. You'll see them, they need extra armor, they'll slab a log of wood. and that works. Now, I'm not saying we need to go and be like Russia, but we have to get back to the basics to some degree. And, you know, Bedouins with axes. I don't need a high-tech
Solution.
set of cameras to stop a Bedouin with an axe. I need a guy with a gun who would basically either shoot him or order him to surrender and take him to jail where he belongs. That's about it.
And why are they not doing this? Like, do they make excuses? Like, have they given a reason for not doing this?
So there seems to be a perpetual excuse, which is Bagats is stopping us, but it's just a
Bagasse being the
perpetual
Supreme
excuse.
Court.
Right. The idea that the Supreme Court stops Ben Gvir from arresting a Bedouin with an axe is ridiculous. They
Hmm.
don't release those people. When they go to jail, they go to jail. It's not America. This is not Europe. They don't get released for being he didn't know that's his culture. They don't get that here.
Right.
So it's just a matter of not arresting them. And then why is the police unable to arrest them? And I'm also very critical of that. Ben Gvir basically replaced the entire top brass of the police force.
Hmm.
And they could say, now they're right wing, they listen to us, they don't arrest right wing protests. But the reality is, I'm far more concerned about getting robbed by a Bedouin. Or, you could drive in the road near Beersheba. They'll come with this ramshackle, half broken car, make a break for it when they're in front of you, cause you to crash them, get out and rob you, and maybe take your car too. It's like that's far more concerning for me than whether the police would be friendly to a bunch of protesters.
Right.
Because most of my life, I don't go to protests, but I do go to Beersheba, and I know people I know a friend whose store was robbed. She didn't really have enough insurance to cover everything. Now she's closed. It's like far worse than not being able to go to a protest.
So it's basically surrendering sovereignty to these gangs, because other than a kind of face saving measure of appointing right wingers to higher up police echelons, they haven't had the ability to actually do anything, or they haven't had the desire to actually do anything.
These people don't have the experience, they don't have the talent, and I would rather have a talented leftist in a meritocratic system than a buffoonish right winger. And it's not because I'm a leftist, it's just that our safety in the street is far more important than someone's political opinions.
Right.
I mean, the right always says we want meritocracy, and then they got into power, and what did they do? They did the exact opposite of meritocracy. Now, I understand that Ben Gvir likes respect, and he didn't like the fact that some of these officers were saying, well, we won't listen to him if he does this and that. Understandable, but there should have been some level of meritocracy, not just, well, this guy disrespected me, so I'm going to put somebody who's a yes man.
That's interesting. And what do you think? Do you think a solution is just to go back to a meritocratic system? Because I know there's problems, like we're talking about different problems. We're talking about problems with the bureaucracy and problems with the government itself. So how does a right wing that is pretty united in thought, in terms of settlement of the land, in terms of making sure that criminals are put in jail, to make sure that Arabs are not permitted to just run wild and do whatever they want. But at the same time, when you vote for the right wing parties, this is not typically what you get. You get a lot of face saving measure and bullshit.
Because these people basically allow themselves to rob the country because they're corrupt, and whenever something they can't or don't want to do something, they'll say Bagasse is stopping us, or they'll say America is stopping us, or the European Union is stopping us, so we can't, we can't deal with the Palestinians. America doesn't like it. It's not an excuse. It really isn't.
No, that doesn't sound like an excuse at all. I mean, I know you've also been very critical of Netanyahu. I'm mixed. I'm a mixed bag on it right now. I like the way that he's conducted the war. I think that he's done a lot of things that previous prime ministers haven't been able to do, but I also fear that he's not finishing the job, and he's not going to finish the job. And I think that leaves
They're
Israel
actually
in a precarious position.
they're actually talking about annexing everything from the yellow line and behind, which would
Which is
give Israel
53%
58%
of
of Gaza. 58,
53%, 58. Okay.
58%. Um, it would not be a bad idea. It's just like we had the opportunity to take everything, and now we're taking 58%,
Hmm.
and we're giving some Gazans there a high-tech city allegedly, and it's like, why would I want to annex a high-tech Arab city? I
Right.
want them kind of, I want them out of my country, quote unquote, because they've shown themselves very dangerous to me. Um, the
I would
other thing,
also
and
think
this
I
is
would think also that when you're talking about a high tech city, right? It means you also need people to staff it. So we know that the Arabs are not particularly good or trained at high tech. So what are we going to do? Put Jewish high tech companies in a position where if the
Jewish
government,
babysitters.
yeah, like but if the government like has a lapse in judgment again, we could have another 10/7. Only this
Right,
time of high tech workers instead of farmers and kids dancing at a party.
right. The question is, how will this end up? Meaning, Netanyahu is known as the status quo guy. So, in his defense, even though I hate him, I would say that maybe he's trying to say, well, we'll get the annexation of 58% of Gaza, and then we'll drag our feet, and they won't have a high-tech city. They'll be out of here.
Right.
That could be his plan.
Yeah, but history's shown that those plans don't necessarily work out. It's if you overthink the problem and leave it till another day, then circumstances change and completing your grand plan doesn't seem to work.
That's our high-tech addiction, right? We always try to do high-tech, to do these advanced plans, which sometimes you're just better off with a simple solution.
Right. I mean, even just today, you saw talking about high tech. Israel experienced an internet and a mobile phone blackout for over an hour, and they're not even sure. They say it might have been a cyber attack. Like, if you're dependent on high tech, you're at the mercy of cyber attackers too. So you need to have that
True.
infrastructure back there to make sure that you can still maintain your security edge when you don't have complete access to that high tech.
Yeah, but what you'd usually do is parallel infrastructure, which is you'll have, let's say, cable internet, and at the same time you'll have satellite internet. So if one of them is down, the other can kind of cover for the other.
Okay.
I don't know how good Israel is in that. I know that for years my internet wasn't working very well, and I live in a big city,
So when I was there,
basically Tel Aviv.
I had supposedly broadband in my apartment in Jerusalem and again in Beit Shemesh, and it never worked very well. Like it couldn't get a strong signal, regardless of like there were times of the day where it would have a strong signal, but majoritively it was just as bad as dial up.
Right. So the companies in Israel, at least back in the day, I think it's better now. They're
Hmm.
basically not telling you you get 150 internet speed. They were saying you get up to 150.
Hmm.
So if your machine cannot, if you have an old machine, it just cannot get to that level anyway. But
Right.
even if it can, they might just say, well, the entire building is 150, and since you're three neighbors and you're all the same time, then you only get a quarter of it.
Well, they nailed me
Which
also
is
because I got it through Hot instead of through Bezek, and so then all of a sudden they started billing me for a TV tax, even though I didn't have a TV. They said that because I got my internet through Hot, that I had to pay the TV tax.
Oh, it means that you were TV tax, not
Yeah.
TV. Oh, because you can have a sale, quote unquote, whereby you connect your TV and your internet through Hot or
Right.
through Bezic, and yes, so that would have probably solved the issue. But taxing you is really weird.
Yeah, it was. That's for sure. So I keep asking all of my Israeli friends this question because I think it's relevant. Might not be relevant today, but it will be shortly. What comes after Netanyahu? I mean, the guy's he's old, and he's been prime minister for a long time. I can't imagine in the next election he can lose. But the time is
No, I
coming
can imagine
probably
that.
in the next 10 years where he won't be prime minister anymore. You know?
So I think the biggest issue of Israeli politics is the Hasbara issue, whereby we have been explained to that we cannot get better.
Right.
So when you tell somebody who do you vote for, they say, well, Netanyahu is the best we can get. They don't say Netanyahu is great. You ask about Ben-Gvir, they say, well, he's better than Netanyahu. Not that he's great. He's better than Netanyahu because Netanyahu cocked in the last election or the last, year or something, right?
Mm.
You ask about Smotrich, it's the same thing. And then you have Feiglin, who I kind of like. I don't see him becoming prime minister anywhere soon because
No, he doesn't have the popular support.
he doesn't have the popular support and he doesn't know how to get it. And when I tried to contact him, and I know other people who tried to contact him and get into his campaign, they basically didn't want to relinquish power. They didn't want to relinquish control over anything. And they didn't want to cooperate. They just invited to this WhatsApp group and say, when we make this post, please repost it. And it's like, if you want this kind of like and repost shit, you can just get bots online. You don't need me for that. And
No.
you'll get a much bigger bang for your buck. So I even, I opened that Zehut community on Twitter. It has, let's see how many people, I think 2014. So it has 2014 people. I told Feiglin, you can have this community. I'll give it to you. And then whenever you post, you could pin the post to the community. That's once in 24 hours you can do it. And everybody who are in the community will get a notification.
Mm-hmm.
That's a far stronger tool than just posting randomly on Twitter. But they didn't do it.
I mean, my opinion of Feiglin, whereas I did like him at one point when he was trying to kind of reshape the Likud, but as of now, he's taken this kind of libertarian idea for Israel, like where he's trying to put out libertarian ideals, which
Yeah.
I think are stupid even here. So I don't see that resonating with
Yeah.
Israeli voters.
He got that from Gilad Alper, who is this libertarian guy in Israel and was part of the Zehut party originally. Now he's not.
Mm-hmm.
Gilad Alper basically did the whole libertarian shtick, and then he got him to work with the junkies, basically. Oh, we want weed. And then
Right.
Feiglin foolishly went on that weird touching the feet kind of interview, and that flopped his campaign. He was supposed to get like 12 Knesset seats before that. He didn't even pass the. And so now he doesn't really do that, but why are you keeping the whole libertarian economy shit? Because it doesn't make sense. I mean,
Especially
they
in a
say
country
something
like
like,
Israel, which has such a government oriented economy. So
right, whenever you have what they call privatization, it's generally not about making the economy more efficient. It's about giving companies to your friends,
right,
which is very sad. But it's even worse because they're talking about, well, how will we reward soldiers who fought in Gaza? Well, we'll give them land. And it's like, I don't live in the medieval economy. I don't know how to farm.
mm-hmm.
Maybe the hilltop youths and these guys, they know how to farm. I don't know how to farm. So if you just gave me random plot of land in Gaza, what would I do with it? I would either, as the cryptocurrency people say, I will hodl it and wait until it has value, or
Right,
I'll sell it right here, right now,
and then
get
try to just
peanuts, and then some.
lower your cost of living.
Yeah, I'll get some peanuts, and then some big company that will buy all of these plots of lands from the soldiers will build something big and make lots of money. So, from that perspective alone, what you need is government work, meaning give the soldiers money, sell the land as is to a large company as a part of a larger project or
Mm-hmm.
multiple large companies. That's how you raise money. You don't give the soldiers a tiny plot of land and say, well, do whatever you want with it. Maybe you can go live in a caravan on it. How is that going to solve my economic problem? What do you think I know how to build a house or farm? I don't know how to do that shit.
Well, that's
And
also it
if
didn't
you
work
can,
for the Roman Empire. It's not going to work nowadays. Like that's what they did in the Roman Empire. They gave farmland to the soldiers when they got back. But the problem is that most of the soldiers didn't know how to farm. So eventually they sold them to just large landowners, and they became peasants. And the only people who benefited were the large landowners.
Right. The Byzantine Empire, which is a later reincarnation of the Roman Empire, kind of solved it, whereby they turned these people into semi-professional soldiers, farmers, and they did give them the training to be farmers. But what, you're going to train now 300,000 soldiers who are high-tech workers to be farmers on these small plots of land in Gaza? It's not going to work.
It's
So
also not going
really,
to be
they have to.
financially viable. Like, it's not something that's going to, even if they became good farmers, there's not that much money in farming on a small scale for a small country. Even if you plan on exporting your goods, it's still, the money isn't there, especially as there are, if like, let's say, I don't know, 10,000 of them decided to become small farmers, the money wouldn't be there to make it a lucrative practice, especially if they're trained in high
Right.
tech and drone operation and shit like that.
And even if your goal was to give people houses or apartments, which apparently seems to be their goal, you know what's Pinui Binui in Israel, right?
No.
Like they destroy okay, so they destroy an existing building and they replace it with a taller building, and then they give the existing, the people who live there, they give them apartments that are slightly bigger or slightly better.
Right.
And so the profit for the company is kind of that they have extra apartments to sell. And if you really wanted to give people free apartments, which I'm not sure how viable that is, you would basically say, okay, we'll give these plots of land in Gaza for development to these companies. They'll give us some apartments, and then we give those to the soldiers. But I'm not sure why not just give them money. Makes more
Right.
sense to me.
Especially because now they can build those apartments in Gaza for the people who want to live in Gaza, and the money that they give them can just go directly towards a down payment or things like that. We do that here in America. If you've served in the military, you qualify for a military mortgage, which means you don't have to put a down payment more than I think the fee is $5,000. So no matter how much of a house you're buying, it's $5,000 plus you get the best mortgage rate that the government has to offer. So
Right. So something like that could make sense. But
right,
again, I would just rather get a lump sum of money, you
yeah,
know?
of course. Well, I mean, think of if you had the same type of program there, like something similar, right? Then a soldier who's given, let's say, I don't know, 20,000 shekel, and a fee would be 10,000 shekel to get a mortgage, right? They can go buy an apartment by where their career is going to be focused, where their family is, where they want to live, and still be able to afford the mortgage fee and get the mortgage from the bank, as opposed to having to kind of rough it like they do now. It's for those that don't know, getting a mortgage in Israel is not as simple as it is here in America. So it's already a bit of a complicated process. You have to have co-signers. You have to have a minimum of 20% down. You have to have the levels of insurance, and most of the mortgages are adjustable rate, so they don't offer that level
Well,
of kind of stability.
you can choose on that, but yes, you can kind of opt to a different, but on default it would be like that.
Right.
Um,
Because when I bought my house, my father was in the military, so he was the one who bought it, like for the family, and we got an interest rate of 0.75%. We only had to put $5,000 down, and we got like every kind of perk you could imagine because my father served in the military. And
Makes sense.
if we had wanted to do it otherwise, we would have had to put $20,000 down. We would have had to get mortgage insurance, and we would have gotten a rate from the bank of probably like 3-4% as opposed to the 0.75%. So it's a
Mm.
great perk. I've often said that Israel doesn't offer its soldiers enough programs. Like, I know they have free university anyway, but here we have the GI Bill, where if you want to go study, they make sure that they pay for it if you've served in the military. Like they could offer those
I don't
kind of
know.
perks.
Soldiers in the Israeli army are basically abused without any tangible reward. It's sad to say it. I mean, because
Hmm.
I am an Israeli, paratrooper, and so I mean, they basically call you property of the IDF when you're serving. It's like, I'm
Hmm.
not your property. I'm a free man, you know? I really don't like being called property of the IDF, or I mean, I hate being told what to do in general, but
Yeah, but I think that's most people, And so someone, David S, just asked in the chat, what's wrong with some libertarianism? There's nothing wrong with some libertarianism. The problem is when you adhere to the ideology above what's practical, and you say, well, the ideal is to always have the government outside of your decision making process, and that ideal overrides common sense, and that's why libertarians always lose, is because they hold to ideals above what makes sense for an economy.
it's also because they don't make sense for anyone who votes for them. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
their promise is if you're smart, you'll succeed under our system. So it's like if I'm dumb or uneducated or poor or I just don't have opportunities or you're not promising me anything like the socialist, why would I vote for you?
Right.
Now,
There's nothing like personally in it for me to do so.
right, you're catering for a very small percentage of the population, so you're gonna lose. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not necessarily against the free market, but my theory is completely different. Like they say that we have a trickle-down economy. I think we have a trickle-up economy,
We
meaning
do. In Israel, you do.
if if people can't afford their standard of living, and with Smotrich's new taxes, they can't, then what do we see? You have to kind of sell your assets to
Mm-hmm.
make up for to keep your standard of living. Now, I'm not in that situation, but there are people who are, and then like when they have less assets, they have to either rent them or, you know, basically
Or
rent
they
them or give
or
up on
they
them.
they
So
have
they'll
now.
have even
I
less income.
So I had this more experience as an Ole, and I obviously ran in more of the circles of the Olim when I was there. Is that what happens? Is they get stuck in a debt circle, where in order to maintain a standard of living, they're constantly going into more debt, and
Right.
then so they're never able to get out of that cycle because paying off the debt would be so painful that they just choose to pay off as much as they can when they can, and therefore their standard of living hits a ceiling. Like no matter how much money they make, unless they won the lottery or something like that, they're never able to like really advance.
Right, and that's a really shitty system to live under. I mean, do we really want to have a perpetual class, which is ever growing, of people who, in order to be able to keep a decent life for their children, whereby they're not, being humiliated at school for having a torn up shoe,
Mm-hmm.
that we will have this, just put them under more and more debt, and they don't own an apartment. I mean, young people here don't own apartments anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a minority, and it's like, why would we want that for ourselves? I don't want to have the. I mean, they're talking about the stock market going up. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I know that our friend Noam has a lot of investments, and he said that he's rich. I don't know how rich. And so for him, stock market going up, it means the economy is good. But if you're some guy who lives here
Well, he's not just to
and
clarify, he's not invested in the stock market. He's invested in the crypto markets. So, little different.
yeah, so basically, whatever his investment is, like the stock market going up doesn't mean the economy is doing well. It just means that I mean, it can mean if the economy is growing, but if the economy is not growing, what you're actually seeing is that small businesses who are not in the stock market get bought by big businesses who are in the stock market. So the stock market goes up, but the actual economy doesn't necessarily go up. I
Right.
have more homeless people where I live since October 7. Before COVID, we had zero homeless people. I've never seen a homeless person in my city before COVID. After COVID, we had a few. Now I have like 20 people circling around the town when I walk with my dog, because I walk all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
I'll see 20 different faces. That's not something I want to see.
Right.
And like people will say in America, they like to hate on the homeless. They'll say they're poor, they're dumb, they're mentally ill. I don't do that. I mean, these people didn't exist, as homeless people 5 years ago. So they were probably able to maintain their life somehow until you kind of crush them first with COVID and then with this war. I mean, Smotrich raised our tax that was on Ynet like 26,000 shekels per average family for the average
Right.
household, right? For the viewers, I'll translate it 26,000 shekels to dollars. That's $8,183 a year. That's a lot of money for, regular people.
It's a ton of money for regular people. I mean, especially in Israel, where the salaries aren't on par with the rest of the world as well. Like your take home pay is not on par with what it is in the rest of the world.
Our minimum wage actually went up. I didn't know that because I don't have work at that, but like 6,247 shekels. When I
Which
was in the army, it was like 4,800.
Right, but even 6,000 shekel, like I mean, with today's exchange rate, you're talking about less than $2,000 a month. That's not a lot of money to live on, especially in the state of the economy over there, where the cost of living is very high.
$1,966.
Yeah,
Yeah, not a lot.
it's not a lot of money. Now, granted, a minimum wage is not supposed to be the standard. Like you're not supposed to have a majority of the country on the minimum wage, but I know it is a problem there.
But it is a problem for young people who
Hmm.
are close to minimum wage. And when you're flooding the market with all of these Indians now,
Has this been a
the
problem?
minimum wage,
Have they been importing a lot of Indians?
yes. And I don't really want to go against the Indians. I don't have a problem with them or anything, but we used to have Filipinos, right?
Hmm.
I don't see them anymore. Now I see a ton of Indians, a lot more than we had Filipinos. And at the start of October 7, they basically told us we have to bring these Indians because they'll replace the Arabs that we can no longer import here. But now what we have is we have all the Arabs that we used to have before October 7, and we have the Indians on top of them. So we have more foreign workers than ever. This basically dilutes the value of labor.
Hmm.
So more and more people don't have a lot of money, or lose their jobs. And it's like, I don't really want to interact with Indians in the supermarket because they don't speak English. And it's like, and they don't speak Hebrew either. So,
Right.
I have to interact with this person in sign language. Why would I want like a shoe to talk to me in sign language? Like, let's say I don't want to buy certain things suddenly. I don't want it anymore. Now I have to
Hmm.
sign language game with this guy. I don't want to do that. At least bring Indians who can speak English.
Right.
And even then, there would be Israelis who can't speak English, like let's say my grandma. So what? She doesn't get to have a comfortable experience in the supermarket anymore.
I mean, what you're saying makes complete sense, unfortunately. But okay, there's one more topic I want to get into before we close it down because it's something that you know a lot about and I don't know enough about. So we've been hearing a lot about the Hilltop Youth lately, right? We've been hearing about the the the, I don't want to call them settlers because I think it's a crappy way to describe them, but the residents of Yehuda and Shomron who are protecting their homes from Palestinians. And some people call them terrorists, some people call them, soldiers. I think they're patriots, but at the same time, like what is the deal? Like what is happening with the Hilltop Youth movement?
So it's a very decentralized movement because they don't trust anyone.
Hmm. Nor
Um,
should
they
they,
basically
obviously.
they basically generally they'll either capture a hilltop that they consider vital, or there would be Bedouin raids on some Jewish settlement. And people from that settlement will go to them and say, look, we'll give you money to set up the hilltop. And then the Bedouins will no longer come.
Right.
So we've basically driven our own population to a situation whereby they have to go and practically pay protection to these hilltop youths, right? Not in a bad way, right? They won't go like the mafia and burn your house if you don't pay them, but you basically invite them, come over, we'll give you money to buy all of your electric generators and whatever, and your cattle and your guns, And in return, you kind of keep those Bedouins away. And it's like, this is not a failure of the hilltop youths. This is a
Right.
failure of our government, that we have to go and pay someone to protect to protect the to protect our settlement from Arabs, instead of the army doing that, or the police, because we're paying for that too through our taxes. Like I pay a lot of taxes, and well, in my city, I don't have to pay hilltop youths, but if I lived in Gush Etzion, it's like, I'm paying you for the police, I'm paying you for the army. I probably served in the army if I'm a citizen from there, and I have to pay some teenagers or 20 years olds with kids to hold guns, herd cattle, and keep Bedouins away. And it's double effective, because one, they fight the Bedouins, and two, when they graze the land, the Bedouin will not come there because he
Right.
also wants to graze the land. But
So
it's a tug of war. Yeah, go on.
so they're basically they're holding the land for the state, and they're making sure that the land isn't encroached on by the Palestinians that live in those areas. They're providing protection for the towns and communities in Yehuda and Shomron, but at the same time they're being persecuted by the government to some extent for being lawless.
Well, if you don't want vigilantes,
Then you provide the
ensure
police
that there
force
is law and
yourself.
order.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, if you're going to punish the vigilantes, what you're actually creating is, how do you call it? I forgot the name. There was a name for it. I think they call it something with anarchy, but not really anarchy. I forgot the term. There was something like, where the government ensure that there is anarchy by punishing the people who keep the law and order,
Right.
while not punishing the criminals. Right. There is a term for that, but whatever. But this is what we're seeing, and I mean, it's kind of similar to Europe, whereby they don't punish the rapists, but they'll punish anyone who kills what they call them, grooming gangs.
Right.
But do we really want that in Israel?
Of course not.
And we're kind of getting that with Bedouins now. And I
Right.
don't want it.
I mean, I know, I tried to put you in touch with him. I have a friend who started a farm out near Gush Etzion, and
I should call him.
yeah, great guy, and he runs a yeshiva from that farm as well. And I know they all have to do guard duty to make sure that the Arabs don't just come, try to claim their farm, which is nuts. It's absolutely nuts that the government can't provide the most simple of protection less than 5 miles away from Jerusalem. You know.
But it's kind of worse, because the government, like in Israel, land prices are artificial, right?
Hmm.
Because the government decides them.
Right.
Now, you could say the government thinks what to do and how much to price everything. But what we're seeing is that they sell land to Arabs cheaper than they sell it to Jews. So
Really.
it's kind of this significantly cheaper. There was this Israeli guy who exposed it. I could check the name. Land. Do I find it? I think Igal Malka. Igal Malka? Let's see. Okay, I can't find it, but
It's
it was
okay.
Igal something. Anyway, so I think it was Igal Malka. He basically exposed that they sell land to Arabs for like 2,000 shekels per square meter, and then a
Mhm.
Jew has to buy it for like, I think, 15,000 or 20,000, and it's like,
Especially
that's
when they're
unfair.
buying in Yehuda and Shomron. I mean, the prices are off the wall if you actually
Yeah,
want to buy the
also
land.
in northern Israel and southern Israel. So now this encourages two very bad things. One is the Jewish land, because it's expensive, we have to build up, right? So we have to build these tall buildings and live in squalor. And Arabs, they can afford cheap land, so they build, wide.
Hmm.
And this means that more and more land will fall under Arab control, and we don't want that. And then another thing they do is in the job market, right? Arabs get it easier for affirmative action to get a university degree in medical institutions. So if I need to get 700 something in my psychometric test, that's something like the SAT in America, they only need to get like 600. And so Jewish doctors and nurses are dying breed because Arabs have it easier there. And then on top of that, they give, I believe, 50,000 shekels as a reward for hiring Arabs. So for every Arab you hire, you get 50,000 shekels. Now, like we said, if you hire people for a minimum wage job, which is 6,000 shekels a month, you've basically just got yourself a year worth of wages covered, almost. So why hire a Jew when you can hire an Arab and get that kind of money?
And be
Or
paid
you can
for the
hire an
privilege.
Indian. Right. Or you can hire an Indian who will work 100 hours and get a minimum wage. It's like they won't get a minimum hourly wage. What they do is they work for a minimum monthly wage, but they work like twice the hours, which basically undercuts the market.
Unbelievable. Well, that's the time we got for today, Apex. Man, this has been fun. We should do this again. I'd like to get into this a little bit more. I try to keep the shows to about 45 minutes.
Yeah, I would have loved talking about the UAE and all that shit, but
Oh,
yeah,
you know
next
what? Let's go. I'm good. So, because I keep getting asked about this, and I have my own opinions. So, what is it about the UAE that you're finding interesting?
So, because the Saudis were basically the leaders of the Arab world, you'll agree?
Sure.
Because they're bigger, they have more population, they have more oil, and that put them very powerful. And so all of these Arab countries were aligned with the Saudis because the Iranians were considered a bigger threat. Israel has basically proven itself as a non-threat because it isn't very expansionist. So they don't view us as a threat. And Iran was just battered down, so they don't view it as a threat.
Right.
And now what happens is that the UAE, it has a developed economy, unlike the Saudis, because the non-oil rich Emirates within the UAE developed their economies to become diversified from oil because they didn't have it. And then Abu Dhabi was looking at that back in the 70s and said, oh, these guys are building other avenues of profit. We should tap into that. 2008 or so, sorry, not Abu Dhabi, it was Dubai first. Dubai kind of tapped into it in the 70s. And then Abu Dhabi joined that kind of project in 2008. So the UAE is very wealthy and developed, and the Saudis only figured out that they should start doing it in 2016. As a result, the UAE controls the best ports, the best tourism, and all of the headquarters of companies in the Middle East, or almost. Right. And to offset that, now that the Saudis want to compete in this market, they are threatening companies, if you don't come be in Saudi Arabia, you won't be able to operate here.
Right.
And so they're trying to economically box the UAE. And then on top of that, they started fighting in, let's see again.
Yemen. In Yemen. They just
Not
bombed
just Yemen.
They just bombed a UAE caravan that was heading into Yemen yesterday. The Saudis did.
Right. But think about it. They're fighting in Somalia because the UAE is with Somaliland like Israel. They're fighting in Sudan. They're fighting in Libya. It's like in Sudan, the Saudis back the Sudanese armed forces, or the SAF, and the UAE backs West Sudan, or Darfur, and Kordofan, which is the other group. In Libya, the UAE and Saudi Arabia were both backing the LNA, or the Libyan National Army. But the Saudis now joined the Turks, and they're backing the Government of National Unity. So they switch sides. And the reason for that is that they have a zero-sum game here. Because if they're fighting on the same industries and the same companies, right, there's only so much desert tourism you can do. There is only so much company headquarters that can be. right? It's either in the UAE or in Saudi Arabia. So they went from cooperation to total zero-sum game. You have some cooperation like IMEC, but even there, you see the Saudis trying to undercut the UAE and say, why connect the railroad to a railroad in the UAE when we can do that to a railroad in Oman? Oman is building 2 ports in what's called Duqm and Sohar to replace the UAE's Jebel Ali port.
Right.
And so what you'll see is that they are having these proxy wars all over, and they're having these economic wars all over. It's not just if you've noticed the war in Ethiopia, because Saudi Arabia is allied to Egypt, they didn't intervene because they can't help the Tigrayans because they're Christian. You can't help a Christian if you're a Muslim against another Muslim. Right? That would look bad. But you kind of, rub your hands and you say, well, Ethiopia is an enemy of Egypt because they're building the, how it's called again? The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dome, or the JERD.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want Egypt to not be in a watery trouble, right, and to have time to build up their water infrastructure, you kind of want Ethiopia to be occupied. What did the UAE do? They joined the Ethiopian government against the Tigrayans. So again, they're fighting against Turkey and Egypt and Saudi Arabia at the same time. And therefore, what we're seeing is this realignment whereby Israel, not very friendly to Turkey, not very friendly with Egypt, is becoming friends with the UAE.
Which makes sense.
Somaliland.
Which makes sense also not just on united purpose, but on united enemies. Because the UAE has actually made attempts they've outlawed the Muslim Brotherhood. They make attempts to arrest extremists, things like that. I'm probably not up to the standard anybody would want, but enough more than Saudi Arabia and Qatar.
But so did Saudi Arabia and Egypt. They also outlawed the Muslim Brotherhood. So that's not necessarily the thing. There's also the old fear, meaning the Saudis conquered the UAE twice in the past.
And Qatar still holds some of the islands that UAE claims. Right.
But in the Saudi case, they had the first Saudi state, which was this very large imperialistic force. Mm-hmm. You can look it up in the map if you want, maybe if you have a share screen. And then you have the second Saudi state, which was smaller, but it conquered Bahrain and the UAE. Mm-hmm. And then the third Saudi state, which is the one we have now, also invaded the UAE. They just failed to conquer them. Maybe I can check when exactly they invaded, but it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter.
So,
I hear you.
Right. So after 3 times that the Saudis tried to conquer them, they don't like them. Jordan also doesn't like Saudi Arabia because they conquered the Hijaz from them, or well, from their royal family. They had 2 kingdoms, well, 3. And then, so that's what we're seeing. Now, the Saudis will probably not start a war with the UAE right now because they're economically dependent on them, meaning the Emirati ports are the only viable way right now.
Bypassing Iran.
Bypassing Iran and exporting their oil productively. Mm-hmm. But what you're seeing is the Grand Al Faw port in Iraq that can be used especially if what they're called, Kuwait cooperates with the Saudis, or if they build a pipeline on the sea. Then the other option is, again, Oman. If Oman plays the game and connects their ports to Saudi oil or Saudi railways, suddenly they are not dependent on the UAE. They can attack them. And finally, so is IMEC. Like the idea of connecting the UAE to Saudi Arabia, to Jordan, to Israel could backfire on the UAE, because if they can export their goods, not the UAE, like the Saudis, just through Jordan to Israel to Europe, then they're not as dependent on the UAE as they might be, especially if Oman play game and lets them connect to it, like 2.1. And
It
then they
also
might
helps
go
the
to war.
UAE that Israel is establishing relations with Somaliland, because that opens up the shipping ports out of UAE much better than it does anyone else, especially since the
Right,
UAE has
because
diplomatic relations with Israel.
right, and especially because the UAE and Israel are in big trouble here, right?
Hmm.
The Saudis have the largest military budget, I think, in the Middle East. They have $78 billion a year.
Which is
The
higher than
Israeli military
Russia.
budget is, yes, Israel military budget 2025.
It's about 24, $25 billion.
140 billion shekels, which is 37 to 45 billion dollars.
Okay, so they upped
That's
it.
during wartime, but that's during wartime. We weren't doing that during peacetime. So, and the UAE wants to kind of up their budget from 25 billion dollars a year to half of what Saudi Arabia does. They basically said, whatever you'll do will go to half of what you do.
Which is, by the way, all they need because of per capita. They have a much smaller population, much smaller landmass. So to increase their spending to half of Saudi Arabia would be a huge amount of money for UAE. Like, that would be a massive
It would
military
be
expenditure.
right, but they're counting on Israel and Jordan helping them, I believe,
Sure.
because Israel and Jordan are both under threat from the UAE. And then there is my personal pet project. You probably heard me and David talking about it, which is again the Grand Al Fawr port. It's supposed to connect all the way through rail to Turkey, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what if we do the unthinkable and tell the Iraqis, don't just connect to Turkey, have options. Connect to Jordan or Syria and then to Israel. Or both.
But wouldn't that require some kind of like diplomatic relations with both Syria and Saudi Arabia?
No, no, because you're basically saying Iraq to Jordan and Israel or to Iraq to Syria and Israel. Now, if we get the Rojava corridor, the stuff the Kurd wants,
Mm-hmm.
then we don't even need Syria. We don't even need Syria. If we don't want to go to war with them, we can either do it through Jordan or if we're agreeing with Syria. But what will happen is now we won't be dependent on IMEC once it's established. We'll have two trade routes. One, Israel goes to Iraq, goes to the sea. The other, Israel goes to Saudi Arabia, goes to the sea.
Mm-hmm.
And that wouldn't benefit just Israel, but also the UAE, because if the Saudis decide to block them, they can send their goods through Iraq to Israel, to Europe. And while this pet project of mine has not bore fruit, I'm trying to speak to people in the government over it and raising money,
Mm-hmm.
but they're a bit of how do we say it? They only think inside the box, and and their box is what other people from other countries tell them. They don't really like listening to Israelis. But if we have that, we kind of cock the Saudis. And
Right. Or at least we make them dependent, which really does help us in the long
no,
run.
not dependent. IMEC makes them dependent, right? But we are also
Mm-hmm.
dependent on them. But if we are also connected to Iraq, suddenly we have two options, but we are the only end node. So everybody are dependent
Hmm.
on us, and we are dependent on nobody.
Interesting. And how would you protect this corridor?
Well, if it goes through Jordan, then it would be completely safe
Right.
because there's no trouble there. If it goes
Also,
through
Jordan has
Syria,
been
then we either
actively
have
also Jordan has been actively fighting against Jolani's regime and the different gangs in Syria.
right. If it goes through, I guess, Rojava,
Mm-hmm.
which makes a little bit less sense for Israel, but it can go through Rojava, then again, we would not be. It's like we would either take it over, or we would have some agreement with Jolani and the local Bedouins.
Mm-hmm. The issue
And
with
from
going
our
through Rojava is
perspective,
it would require it would require at least a détente with Turkey as well.
no, because it's kind of southern Syria. I'll send you a picture.
No, I know
Um,
where Rojava is, but it also borders Turkey.
yeah, but I'm saying like we're going through the Rojava corridor, not through Rojava de facto. So it's like
You
something
mean
like
going down the south going south through Jordan and into Israel, as opposed to going north and then south by Lebanon or Syria?
something like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'll send you. I'll send you the picture. Right. These are two very basic options, not really necessarily the best routes, but you kind of get the idea, which is you either go through Baghdad to Damascus to Israel, or you go from or Baghdad to that area, or through straight to Jordan. And that kind of bypasses the Saudis, which would be an interesting thing to do. Now, that would piss off the Turks,
Hmm.
but knowing you, you kind of like pissing off the Turks.
I do like
And
pissing off
since
the
the
Turks,
Turks
actually.
and since the Turks are basically allied to Saudi Arabia, attacking Saudi Arabia and the Turks is always good.
I would agree with that 100%. I think anything that screws over the Turks and Saudi Arabia is a good thing when it comes to Israel. Because I don't think that making them a partner is viable, nor do I think they're an honest actor. So I don't think that we can take anything they say personal.
They're a very aggressive state. They're
Yeah.
not as friendly as the UAE. The UAE has, to my knowledge, never invaded anyone. The Saudis,
The UAE
no.
has done more proxy wars than anything else. But
Right, but their proxy wars were generally either in support of Saudi Arabian proxy wars when they were a Saudi, basically vassal state until now. And now that they're reasserting their independence and allying Israel, their proxy wars are against Saudi Arabia. Because
mhm.
again, they're playing this zero-sum game. They're not willing to cooperate anymore. And so putting a government that is on your side makes sense. It's like you'll either have this proxy war or you're not going to be in that market. Now, from Israel's perspective, we might want Yemen to actually balkanize, meaning if they basically have this South Yemen, Houthi state, and Sunni, Saudi state, they would be stuck and they would be weak, and weak Arabs are less likely to attack Israel. So that
They
might
would not
actually
only
be in
be
our
weak,
favor.
but with Israel starting to move into the air base in Somaliland, a southern Yemen with a military force would be much less able to accomplish anything, because we wouldn't have to fly our planes or drones all the way from Israel proper into Yemen to retaliate for attacks or stop attacks. They could be stopped from right over the water.
Well, technically, Somaliland is not the only country that can provide us with that. There's
Hmm.
Eritrea. So they're really fucking poor. They have like a GDP of 2 billion, 2 billion
Right,
something. Eritrea GDP.
right.
So their GDP is 2.28 billion. That's very little. And their population is 3.5 million people. So they're very poor. We have a lot of Eritreans in Israel, and kind of what I'm starting to think, and that was something I thought about with the Hilltop, is why not make friendship with Eritrea? Because right now our courts tell us you can't deport these refugees because their government might hurt them.
Hmm.
And it's kind of nonsensical because you have refugees who are pro-government and they beat up the refugees who are against the government. But from my perspective, why not basically make some economic deal with Eritrea? We'll be their backers when it comes to arms as well. And in return, they'll take back their refugees and say, we won't hurt them. Basically, like they'll have to give us a guarantee that they won't hurt them. And then we can deport them.
The only thing that allying with Eritrea does, though, is it closes the door to relations with Ethiopia, and from what I understand, there's not that many Jews left at Ethiopia anyway. But before getting them out, it could be a problem, because Eritrea and Ethiopia fought, I think, like
Um,
6 wars in the last 100
yes and
years.
not, but it would appear that Eritrea and Ethiopia are becoming more friendly because they want them for the forts.
Right.
Um, getting more friendly. Right. So,
I mean,
oh,
again,
they're
you're not
actually
wrong. It's just, again, it becomes more complicated when you're dealing with two countries who have such a long-standing hatred and animosity towards each other. Even if they become more friendly diplomatically, you know, they still, working with one would be considered a slight to the other, regardless.
Potentially, but they kind of want the ports, meaning if Israel's economic pitch was we'll build or we'll kind of help you build a port in Eritrea and connect it by rail to Ethiopia, that would probably make both sides happy.
It would make
Because
both
if you
sides
look
happy if Israel
historically,
either paid for it or guaranteed the loans to build it, because as of right now, they're forced to turn to China for it, and it puts them in massive debt in order to do so. So Israel could offer either a loan guarantee or offer to even pay for part of it and mitigate that.
right, and what I want them in return is to take my Arabs, as always. Basically, I want them to take back the Eritrean refugees to say that they won't hurt them publicly,
Right.
so that Bagatz will not cause trouble. Because here is actually where Bagatz is a problem, right? And the second thing I'll say is, could you please take some of our Palestinian workers to go work in Eritrea or Ethiopia on the construction of these railroads and ports? And this kind of solves the issue that Israel has, whereby they say, well, we have to give them jobs because otherwise they'll get rowdy, right? That's always the excuse. So I'm saying, we'll give them jobs in Africa. They can be rowdy or unrowdy over there. I'm sure the Eritreans will know how to deal with them much better than we do. And that way we can kind of get rid of a good chunk of them. Not forever, maybe. Maybe they'll come back. But from what I've heard, 1 in 3 chooses to stay abroad after they go away from Israel. So let's help them do that.
It would be a much higher number than 1 in 3. It's that most of them have nowhere to go. So it's not that they don't want to leave; they just have nowhere to go. If they were given an option of a place they could go, they would stay.
Right, and I'm saying is basically, well, it's 1 in 3 from Judea and Samaria. If we send Gazans, that might be a much higher number. It's like you get some of these friendly Gazan construction workers in Africa, and we just give you money to build that stuff, and then we own it, right? That's kind of how you build an empire. You kind of own stuff abroad, whether you take it over physically or just, I just own it, right? I own the port, I own the railroad, I operate it. But there really isn't this kind of strategic thinking in Israel, because we have, again, the libertarian mindset of the Likud, whereby they view the economy as separate from the government,
right.
Whereby and I don't know how you view it, the economy is a part of the government, or it's a tool to a degree, whereby you should be willing to spend money to get influence abroad. And nothing gives you more influence than companies that lobby abroad in a semi-legal way or legal way.
Well, I mean, that's not even an unlibertarian ideal. Like, the idea of using economics to advance your interests with other countries is not against libertarianism.
But it clashes with their belief that the economics should be as efficient as possible and private.
Which causes a problem over time, because the private ownership can conflict with government interest.
Right, and what I'm saying is we'll basically have a mixture of government and private ownership, Israeli ownership if possible, to go to Eritrea and build a port, to go to Somaliland and build a port and connect them with rail to Ethiopia, which would greatly benefit Ethiopia, but it will give us a lot of influence in these two fledgling countries. And with influence, you get rid of Gazans.
Yeah, which is should be a priority for everyone. Okay, now I do got to run, but Apex Man, thanks for coming. Everybody, you can find him at Apex Imperialist on Twitter. Please give him a follow and join him in spaces. It's always a fun conversation, and I do appreciate you coming, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well, invite me again if you want. So,
I will.
Bye.
I have every intention of it. We'll talk soon, my friend. Bye-bye.
My fellow Americans, tonight I'm speaking to you because there is a growing humanitarian and security crisis at our southern border.
In all honesty, a border wall or steel slats won't work. But great bodies of water will separate us from the horrible Mexican rapists. Introducing the 2019 Trump Great Border Moat, stocked with the most aggressive penis fish, incredible man-eating alligators, and unbelievable genetically modified moose-cocked rape dolphins, as well as flying, migrant-eating sharkfish. So incredible.
I swore to protect our country, and that is what I will always do. So help me